Welcome to Through Your Looking Glass, a podcast that explores the world of research technology. Combining speed and insights, ResTech reflects a deeper knowledge of the people around us. We're leading the conversation about this complex industry, which spans from traditional market research to advertising, media measurement, and beyond. Join us as we chat with experts and enthusiasts in the ResTech community and learn more about its evolution, application, and ever-growing potential.
Well, welcome. My name is Patrick Comer. I'm the founder and CEO of Lucid. On this episode of Through Your Looking Glass, I am utterly thrilled and excited to be talking with my dear friend, Naira Musallam. Naira is a co-founder and the co-CEO of SiteX, which is an automated insights platform. I'm sure she can tell us more about that. But this platform aims to help us all make data-driven decisions and make it accessible and easy for insights teams to use. Now, prior to SiteX, Naira held several professorship positions at Columbia University and NYU, where she taught graduate level courses in statistics and research. So she knows far more than I do about these topics. And so welcome, Naira, to the show.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you very much for your kind introduction and for having me on this webinar. I am equally thrilled to be on it.
Well, I was very excited to have you join, especially because you and SiteX as a company are such innovators in the space, and we see such potential for your product. And so just excited to have you on to tell your story and also how it's going to impact the world around us. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, first things first, I'd love to learn more about your professional background, because it's not every day someone goes from a professorship at Columbia NYU into entrepreneurship into technology. That's a leap. So I'd love to learn more about your professional background getting to this point. And then what was that moment? What was that idea that really made you jump from academia to entrepreneurship?
Thank you. So a bit about me, and I'm actually gonna go a little bit earlier in my life, and like all journeys, right? I would say from a very young age, the values of being informed, being scientifically driven were instilled in me. I would also say I was raised to believe that it is really important to use whatever skills and gifts we have to make contributions to societal progress. With that being instilled in me from a very young age, not surprisingly, pretty quickly, I became interested in the you can say the intersection really of data and understanding humans, what drives them, what explains their behaviors, and their emotions, right? My early career actually started in the non-for-profit world, where I was interested in understanding how political violence influences the way people see the world. And so I worked with a lot of non-for-profits in war zones. Fast forward about 5 years later, I got really hungrier for knowledge, and I wanted to learn more. And so I ended up getting a Fulbright going to Columbia University to get my doctorate in psychology and statistics. And so I was always one of those weird, if you will, academics who wanted to have one foot in academia and one foot in the private sector. And so while I was teaching statistics and graduate level research courses, I also held positions in consultation in private sector, consulting around data visualizations and making meaning of the data that we consume. I think the moment for me that led me to technology and research and ResTech is really working in the private sector and seeing how technology to an extent has failed the humans to empower them to make decisions in a relevant and timely manner. So somebody would step into my office and say, hey, can we get a cut of this data or this insight about this product? And it depends on the request. I would say either give me half an hour or oh, I need 2 weeks to get you that data cut. But in the back of my head, I was thinking, well, why is it takes us that long to get to the insights, and why my team, who is so talented, is spending about 70% of their time cleaning, formatting, restructuring data, which then actually I learned that it wasn't only my problem. It was a problem that was so pervasive across industries and verticals, especially in the primary market research world. And as the world goes, you know, I'm having my frustrations, and then I met my precious co-founder and co-CEO, Tim Lawton, who was seeing the problem from a different angle. And we basically said, we think we can add a contribution. And so that was a pivotal moment that led, I think, both of us to say, we're giving up our salaries in the private sector and giving up on academia and jumping to the world of tech to solve a problem we thought it was worth solving.
Well, you hit on a key problem that I've seen for years in research and in data. One is that it can take a long time to get to the insights. It doesn't matter when you collected the data, it can take a while to get there. And then B, I've experienced this myself, a substantial amount of time is not in the insights, it's in that cleaning process. It's how do you actually take the data you've collected and make it usable so that whatever machine you're using for insights can actually digest and have some outputs.
Exactly.
And so it sounds like the moment for you was saying, I want to solve those two problems together.
Yes. Yes, and quite frankly, if I am being fully transparent, while it was an honor to hold the position I held at both NYU and Columbia, I felt that it had limited scalability. I wanted to have a larger impact and build and release tools and have them available to those perhaps who didn't have the privilege or the luxury to go back to academia to gain that knowledge. And so for me, Cytix was a continuation of wanting to impact at scale in the intersection of human understanding and data.
So one of the key topics today is around data visualization and data analysis.
Yeah.
And you've often said it's analysis first, then visualization. But how does that topic fit into that core challenge that you wanted to solve for?
Yeah, so when we talk about data analysis or visualization that then drives further analysis, I think it's important to remember that those two steps are happening in a larger process and context. Yeah. And the process really starts from data collection. So you collect the data, assuming you have the proper sample and reliable samples. So supposedly you have solved for sampling and data collection. Then the traditional way has been to then you download it, you download the data. You clean the data according to some parameters. Then you restructure the data because we have a problem in the space that they're silos. So the tools that collect the data are not necessarily structured in a way to enable easy analytics. So many times people end up reformatting, restructuring, and it's a battle. And between the data cleaning, formatting, and restructuring, you're talking about 70% of the time being spent already. Well, now you have about 30% of the time left to analyze the data, visualize it in a way that is digestible and compelling, and make meaning of it. And guess what happens, Patrick? Like by the time you get to that 70%, people often do, and I was one of them, you do what is deemed to be necessary to deliver, and then you move on, because now you have another 10 different requests coming your way. And so we thought, well, what if we flip the equation? What if we automate, and what if we streamline as much as possible from the data collection to the cleaning, formatting, restructuring, and analytics and visualization, so then we can give people back their time to focus really on the one thing that machines are terrible at, and that is relevance and meaning. Machines cannot make business relevance. Machines cannot tell compelling stories and give meanings to the data and analytics you're seeing. And so we wanted to do that because, first of all, we thought it's a waste of human potential. To be spent, sure. It's a waste of human potential. The one thing that nobody gives us back in life is time, and I think the vast majority of us want to spend it on things we like and enjoy and give us meaning. And quite frankly, it's also a waste of company resources. Right? Like, would you rather, as a leader in ResTech, in Insights, do you rather to have the smart people that you've hired to be battling through formatting, restructuring, cleaning, or to actually spend it more on the analytics and the meaning and the compelling visualization? So our value prop is that actually the vast majority would rather spend it on that 30%.
So is this what is probably the most compelling or the most exciting part of how you are automating data analysis and data visualization, is you're giving back time, so that like you and others are not spending the time in the conversion of data from one platform to another, or the data cleaning, etc., but literally spending time on meaning, on relevance, on insight, on the real value. Because if it's one thing if you're getting the bare necessity insights out the door because that's what the project calls for. It's another thing if you go from 30% of your time on insights to 70%, you can now spend more time on the thinking, on the insight piece of it, and come up with something that's actually magical, and that's what I'm hearing, the excitement and passion from your standpoint.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, about 100 years ago, pre SPSS and R and Python, what did we do as statisticians? We sat with a we sat with a notebook and a pencil, and we calculated significance of chi-square by looking at the observed data versus the expected data. Nobody does that today, right? You go to SPSS or whatever platform you're using, or R or Python or whatever that might be, and you just say, I want significant testing. You specify some things, and it does it for you. Now, that was 50 years ago, quite frankly. Up to 50 years ago, we saw that evolution. I think now we're thinking about, okay, so how do we move the industry forward? What is the next iteration of that? Yeah.
Well, that's what I get excited about as well. It's just the less time on the manual manipulation, whether that was physical with a pen or pencil or actual data entry with a keyboard, and more of the automation and more of the relevance being presented to you. Um, and so, if I think about where this is going, is what should our listeners be excited about? If you're someone who's interested in ResTech or how survey or data collection occurs, what is going to be interesting for our listeners to know about in terms of SciDex and this platform?
Yeah, so I would say, regardless of the industry you're interested in, regardless of the vertical, you can even argue,
Right.
if you would disagree with the statement that if you want to be relevant today, you have to be data driven. Now, if
So
you want to separate from the pack and differentiate, you have to be obsessed with data analysis, visualization, and REST tech. That is the reality in a world where almost everything within 5 years becoming a commodity, with the competition continuously increasing, then you got to figure out, how do I differentiate? I think in the insights and REST tech, it's actually particularly more exciting because we're going through a wave of transformation as we speak. There is a wave of transformation, a wave of innovation that is taking place at the moment, and REST Tech is at the heart of it. And so I think it's exciting. I think it's challenging. I think it's transformative. And who doesn't want to be in the middle of all of this, especially that so many businesses are putting REST tech at the core of what they do.
right.
They're from white space to product development, testing, launch, media measurement, pre-sale, post-sale, you name it. ResTech sits across all that process, and I do think it's a very exciting period for us.
It's absolutely exciting. I'm interested in a customer story or customer journey where they were delighted to find that data analysis and data visualization was now easier and faster. Is there something out of your history that you can pull forward?
Yeah, of course. Without, of course, mentioning a name for confidentiality purposes, but let's just take a CPG company, let's say, and I think what ResTech and technologies like ours enabled large companies to imagine, reimagine, and test. So what do I mean by that? In the past, if you had an idea about, let's say, chocolate bar flavor, you want it to launch. Maybe you thought of like 2 flavors, 3 flavors, right? And you did maybe one test to try and figure out like which one you're going to go with. With technologies like ours that is making it fast, affordable, accessible, you're able to test, retest, and iterate in ways that basically was not feasible in the past. So now you start with 20 flavors, and then you focus on the top 5, and then you say, I want to run it through iterations of max diff experiments, and I want to run it 3-4 times in the same study, and then post that I want to do in the same project, do more tests. And I think and not test for the sake of test, it's more for accuracy and feeling confident about which product to put in the market. And so I think one of the proud moment for us has been on Cytex to see iterations of testing, learning, relearning, adjusting on potentially 20 products to go to the market, and then boiling it down to the winner, and then stepping into a convenience store and seeing that one product that ended up being the top choice. We continuously get the feedback from our clients, and directly to your point, Patrick, is that in the past, this was really more challenging to do, not as feasible to do. And now, and they used to be one-offs, where now it's getting into the DNA of companies and insights team to continuously do that and be able to talk with greater confidence with product, other executives about which product will move the needle to the company and by how much.
Well, it sounds like companies are now thinking about their ResTech stack, which platforms, which technologies they're going to use, and recognizing that the speed of not only data collection, but of analysis and visualization has dramatically shifted. Whereas you would not be able to run a survey, but once a week and get data back the following week. Now, product and ideation can be a very iterative process and very, very quick process where you can actually learn and adjust on the fly. And that can dramatically shift the speed, but also, as you said, the confidence of the organization in the decisions they're making, because these are, multi-million, multi-billion-dollar decisions around products and services that are being made every year through ResTech and through Insight.
100%.
Now, you said competition, so I have to ask. Cytex is in a space that there's a lot of competition for. There's some really big players. There's a lot of niche players as well. Agile is a very hot topic in terms of iteration. So just broadly speaking, how do you feel Cytex, or what are the differentiators of Cytex as compared to maybe a SurveyMonkey or a Qualtrics?
Great question. I think the differentiation, it starts actually with our mission. And our mission is all about, if you were to look at Cytex, is to, we say we exist to automate curiosity. Our tagline is to accelerate curiosity. And what do we mean by that? So we wake up every day thinking about what type of functionalities on the analysis and visualizations, what type of tools do we need to release to accelerate curiosity? We think that it genuinely moves the world. We think curiosity drives innovations, it solves problems, it delights people. Now, if you want to create a background or the framework to enable people to be curious, you have to give them the space to be able to think, to be curious. How does that then translate to our differentiation? By thinking about the process from beginning to end. I think one of the things about like the DNA of Cytex from day one is that we didn't think of it as a survey tool where we're gonna help you collect the data and best of luck with what happens afterwards. When the architecture to begin with is to think about how do you solve for the process, systems thinking rather than silo thinking about like one pain point, it fundamentally changes how you build the platform and the features that you layer on top of it. I think ultimately when we speak with our clients and even others who look at Cydex and are familiar with other survey platforms, they say, survey platform takes me from A to B. You guys really try to get us from A to Z. Now we're still not perfect at it, and maybe we're at W right now. But we wake up because for us, if we don't fulfill that mission to make people curious, because now instead of being curious about the data, they're doing manual analytics, then for us, there is a gap. Then for us, there is something we need to address. And that's fundamentally in our DNA. And I would say what differentiates us from the rest. Think about how do you minimize tools. Think about how do you minimize integrations. Think about how do you streamline where needed. That is not an afterthought, right? I just built the core technology and now I need to figure out what else is going on in the market. But from day one, it's built that way and it's built to scale that way. If that makes sense, I hope.
It makes perfect sense. I think that some of the problems of data collection maybe 20 years ago were all about how do we get a survey online at all, and it was all about the data collection side of it, the front end of it, as the A to or B or C of that. And now that that's become pretty normal and pretty widespread, there's a lot of value in, well, that's what do you do after the data is collected, and how does that become a part of the systems thinking, as you said, versus a siloed thinking process. But now there are a lot of people who are relatively unfamiliar with the options or what data analysis and visualization. So I want to talk explicitly just about that piece of the process.
Yeah.
And in the way you view it, it seems like it's pretty linear. There's collection, analysis, visualization, but it'd be great if we could talk about how does that work from broadly speaking, we're at Cydex, the process, and then talk a little bit about how it's evolved over time.
Yeah, sure. So to go back to what I mentioned about 10 minutes ago, on we start, so you collect data, and in statistics there are these secrets that are not that secret. And that is whether you're doing traditional statistics or you're using things like machine learning or other methodologies. There are some fundamentals in math and statistics around the properties of variables, right? And that comes down to, is it numeric, or is it qualitative? Is it categorical variable where the number means something, or is it actually scale where we can see difference between the meaning of 4 and 5? So is it a count, or is it a mean? And so and these were actually the things I used to teach at university, and you stand there and you say, okay, most people are not going to remember that, but we know the manual process from the moment you collect the data. Supposedly you cleaned it. Yeah. And so with Cydex, what happens is, so you collect the data and immediately we recognize what type of variable it is. Is it categorical? Is it mean? Is it qualitative? And depending on that, it gets structured in a way that then enables the relevant analytics on it. So for example, I know if I identified it as a categorical variable, mean doesn't really matter, right? Like male versus females. I want to know how many males versus how many females. So now I know immediately that it needs to go to the dashboard where I do percentiles and I do counts. Now statistics would also tell me that I know for these type of variables, I need to run chi-square and not ANOVA, because ANOVAs are, or t-tests are for when you have scales and you have means and you can do that. So it's a series of, Patrick, if you will, of like trees. That are well established in statistics, very well established. Anybody who's in ResTech, anybody who went through data science course, professional development, you name it, they go into these courses to learn about how to treat the properties of variables. So you introduce technology to it and you say, okay, I can do that. I could probably do it with potentially less human error. I can do it at speed. And then you start thinking about, okay, with all of these beautiful progress we made in library visualizations, like for the last 10 years, which one of those apply to which type of analytics? And so I would say this is, and Cytix is differentiated in the sense that we think about it, the technology identifies it from the beginning, from moment zero, and then it does all of the things that we are as a human experts trained to do. It just, the difference is that it does it at scale, higher speed, and more accuracy. With the data cleaning, I think it gets to an interesting territory. There are some parameters you can identify automatically, right? If the survey is, let's say, at 20% complete, it's not really that sound to include it. So you can give signals to the platform to flag certain things, but then there are always the aspects that require human interventions depending on the context of the project. I think in that territory, what we continue to do is making it very easy and fast for the human to tell the platform what parameters they're interested in introducing for cleaning, and then doing it automatically, semi-automatically. And so I would, Patrick, I would argue, that transformation from silo segments to thinking about a process and streamlining and systems thinking is at the heart, I think, of what has evolved in the industry. And truth be told, 20 years ago, we didn't need to do that. The data was limited, and the data was limited, and the frequency and the demand on analytics were not as high. So you fast forward, so point solutions worked 20 years ago. I think they were great. And I have a ton of respect for those technologies who actually paved the way for that, to think about how do we collect data in a digital way, right? And so they led the way. Now you fast forward 20 years later, and there is a completely different reality we're dealing with. And the reality is more data, more pressure to analyze it, and to analyze it faster. And we're still dealing with the same number of humans. And so this, in a way, created the crisis that then invited, I think, a lot of technologists to say, how can we think about the next generation of that meets the demand of this time?
Well, I love the visualization of these research and statistical trees, these foundational principles or foundational processes that anyone worth their salt in research understands and can execute. And how a technology can look at the data, but also how a question is structured, what type of data it is, what type of variable it is, and then make some assumptions about what kind of analysis you're going to want. Now, it's not always going to be accurate, but at least it's a starting point to know it's already been accomplished. As you start looking at your data, some of the analysis has already occurred. It's part of the step-by-step process, and even some of the visualization can also occur because of the structure of the data and the analysis, the analytical approach. I love that trees kind of view on it. But
Because
also,
sorry,
go ahead.
Patrick. I was going to say to your point, because there are two schools of thought. It's either you're reactive or proactive about solving that challenge. The reactive mindset is that we're not going to think about any of this. What happens post data collection, and once we collect it, we're going to react to it and try to figure it out and reverse engineer it to where we want it to be, or re-engineer it. Where like a proactive mindset, I think, thinks a little bit differently. It says, if we know all of these challenges and they're very clear, how can we upfront build a proactive design architecture that would take care of solving at least 80% of the challenges,
Hmm.
right? Like that makes a massive difference in human life, in companies' life and resources. And I think this is what we're about.
The other thing I want to follow up on there is you mentioned that there's a demand for expediency, that as you called them, point solutions from 10, 20 years ago worked great because the expectation, whether internal or external, about the data analysis, the insights, the speed of the expectation, the scale of the expectation was much smaller and slower.
Yeah,
And then as technology has afforded us more scale and more speed, the expectation has increased.
yeah.
And so the pressure on those in insights, whether you're officially in insights or not, is just rising, and to be able to do more with less. And you said the same number of humans, there may be even fewer humans involved with the process, right?
Yeah.
So one question I have is, how should the tried and true traditional researcher view this change, who may have spent
Mm-hmm.
more time on choosing what style of analysis should we do, what types, or creating visualizations or building them from scratch. So what's the change look like for the researcher? Um, and then secondarily, it also seems like platforms such as SciDex give the uninitiated a lot of power. Meaning, if I were to use a straightforward survey data collection tool that had no real data analysis and no data visualization, I can only get so far, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to at some point have to turn to someone who knows what they're doing with the data and say, what does this mean? Now with a platform such as SciDex, that was my own phone going off, so I'll start again. Now with a platform such as SciDex, you have a scenario where um, the uninitiated can actually get to insights and get to visualization pretty quickly, and they may not have known what they just did from a statistical or research standpoint. So again, trying to get your feedback, or how your customers have found this change in how they work with research with ResTech.
That's a great question. Uh, Look, first of all, I want to say that I sympathize with the change. I would disclose and say the biggest resistance I've gotten when starting to build the technology were actually from statisticians
Interesting.
and
What was their complaints? What was the concern?
because it threatens the notion of expertise, right? Because we spend a lot of time doing. And because that's our expertise, that's what we do. And the notion, the idea that this will transform and evolve, where where there is going to be a shift in our role and what we do, is a change that many don't find easy. And I get it. I get it. I think you can have technology be your uh, most powerful friend or your worst enemy.
Hmm.
I live on the side of history that would argue we're all better off if we try to make technology our most powerful friend. Does it gonna require change in the way we do things? Yes. Could we thrive because of it? 100%. I think it does take a little bit of mind shift and looking at our customers and like the personas we have. It's
Yeah.
interesting because you end up primarily with two profiles, personas.
Okay.
The one profile who has such an acute pain point that they're looking for tech to help them solve that acute pain point. And by that, I mean things like we can't hire 20 people, we're being pressured, and we don't have the expertise and we don't have the budget to buy 5 different platforms. Could you help us with one platform where our people understand generally? And this is an important point. I think the conversation is switching and is shifting from doing to understanding. The technology does. The question is, can we make it meaningful and understandable to people? Because I think people feel comfortable with the idea, I think for the most part, if you accept the idea of change, that I am okay with the technology running for me the series of chi-square and ANOVAs and t-tests that would have taken me 3 weeks to run. But I need to understand what's going on and I need to understand the output. I think if as technologists we help people with those two aspects of no black boxes. One of the things that we've been really outspoken about is that Cydex has no black box in terms of what type of analytics are taking place. So the user always has the power of knowledge. They can understand that it ran for them series of whatever tests that might be. And I think the shift is getting comfortable with interpretation of what those tests mean. And so because I do think there is a disheartening misconception that rest tech is threatening people's jobs and livelihoods. I do think as a technologist, we're coming at it from the opposite direction of saying we want to make it the most powerful tool for you to excel in your role and your contributions to the company. And it requires a little bit of change.
Well, I definitely see that over time is that a lot of the work in market research and insights was data collection, data cleaning, building reports. Um, and and that was a lot of training you may not have had, or the reason you got into the space to begin with is fielding and project management. And now ResTech is providing a lot of streamlining and efficiency through that so that you don't have to spend the time there. And there is some people changing their jobs and job descriptions and roles. That's happening. We see that all the time. But we also see people who have a traditional work experience in research now coming over to the ResTech side because they understand the history, they understand the framework of it all, and they can be very powerful type of hire in addition to a company. So that first persona is I need to do more with less. My output of insights, my output needs to be at a certain level. And my budget, my capacity, what I have, whether it's called expertise, platforms, etc., is smaller. So there's a gap, and that gap causes pain because the expectations around me are this high, and
Yeah.
what I can do. And so I need a method to solve that gap. And please, please, please help me, SideX, help me. That's what I want. What's the other persona that you mentioned that you see all the time?
Thank you for the follow up. And so the second persona, I think it's the type of companies and people who have been riding the wave of innovation and loving it. And so you get the type of companies who are always are tech forward. They want to find out what is the next technology out there innovating in my space, because in their view, that's what will continue to differentiate them and give them the edge around being led by tech, innovations by tech. And so it's not coming from a mitigation point of view, it's coming from a growth and expansive point of view. And sometimes, quite frankly, you get a mix of both, depending the quarter of the year.
Well, I think that understanding how technology influences your industry and getting excited about it can transform your career. I was recently reading some data on CMOs that almost all the chief marketing officers, especially those in advertising and marketing, all have a strong ad tech background. They were all innovators over the past 5 to 10 years. They were on the leading edge of where programmatic advertising was going, where ad
Yeah.
tech was going. And I think the same thing is absolutely true for those who are currently in insights and research careers. You need to be on the forefront of res tech. Where is programmatic going in our space? How is technology transforming what's possible and the speed of change so you can lead the organization through that transformation versus following it?
Exactly.
Um, well, this has been incredible. I think about if there's one idea, one concept, one theme that you want our listeners to take away from this conversation, Naira, what would that be? What's the one lesson you want to make sure everyone hears?
I would say tech progress is inevitable. Uh, it is our collective responsibility to make it human centric and in the service of people and in the service of growth and societal contribution. I think I get I mentioned it. I get disheartened sometimes going to conferences and hearing the negativity talks about tech and the threats of tech, and I get it. I sympathize, but I would like to try and be part of the movement that shifts the discourse. To say it's a tool for the service of people and not to replace people.
Well said, well said.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to move to the final three questions I
Sure.
ask. So the first one is, what was your first job, and what have you learned from that you still use today?
Yeah, so my first job was actually being a junior researcher at the age of 18 in a university setting. And we were tasked actually to try and help traumatized children who grew up in war zone, and there were big debate around should we help them with sports or art? And so there was a heated debate because of a grant that we just received. And I remember being super junior. I didn't know much beyond my math classes. Me asking, do we know what works better for who? And everybody looked at me like a little bit surprised by the question, but then saying, oh, like this is actually a relevant question. I think there was a transformation moment for me, in the sense that I just realized the danger of ideology when it's not supported by data and science. And I full-heartedly believe with human-centric values, being driven by data and science would lead to a better and smarter world. And since that job, even though I held it in so many different, seemingly unrelated, but they were all very related, it just shaped who I am and what wakes me up in the morning.
Well, I'm also a fan of data-driven decisions, as long as there's not, analysis paralysis. But
Yeah,
data-driven decisions are, for me, what helps drive lucid my decision making, and I believe that evidence matters, right?
exactly.
Um, Second question is, what's the best bit of hard feedback that you've ever received?
That's a great question. So in one of my jobs, me and a colleague had a misunderstanding, and I got pretty upset because I thought that what was being said was inaccurate and out of context, the usual disputes. And I remember one of my colleagues telling me, you can't control other people's narratives, but you can shape and master your own narrative in life. So, and you have a choice where to focus, because I was spending a lot of my energy on the other person's narrative and complaining about it and claiming I was the victim of it and it's inaccurate and all of that stuff. And I think, and in that moment when my colleague said to me, like, you gotta just stop, like, stop focusing on others. You're being a complainer. You can't control other people's narrative, but do something, own your own narrative, because that's all what you can do in life. And I think it changed a lot, um, the way I interact personally, professionally, and even, I think about what we're doing in tech, and there are so many different narratives going on, and I'm sure, Patrick, you know that because you deal with it every day, and the truth of the matter is we can't control what others say, but we can control, shape to perfection our own narratives, and that was hard feedback, but probably one of the most useful I've ever gotten.
Yeah, that's amazing feedback. You to control your own narrative and not try to control everyone else's, right? Or even
Yep,
be influenced by them. The third question is, what's the most important thing you learned from your mother?
that's another great question. Now, I lost my mother to cancer in early age, but something she said, thank you, something she said that always stuck with me, and my siblings, quite frankly. She would tell us, whatever you choose to do in life, do it with a full heart or just don't do it. And because doing things with full heart fuels like relentlessness, which you need so often in life. And I think I wake up every day and trying to live up to that, of the importance of doing things with full heart, whatever we do, because life is too short, and we have a choice.
I love mothers because they say the best stuff, right?
They do.
It sticks with you. It lingers. Well, I have one more follow-up question. You told
Please.
me before that English is your fourth learned language.
Yes.
So amazing.
Thank
What are
you.
the other three?
So Arabic is my native. Hebrew is my second language. I speak both Arabic and Hebrew fluently. Then the third one, I speak Russian, and then I have English. So you can actually say English potentially third and Russian fourth, and then there are a few others that like, but I can claim full fluency. But here we're at.
I just don't think you're getting enough of the alphabets and they're very different. Well done on that regard.
Thank you.
Well, anything else you want to add before we close shop here? Or any other question
Sure.
you want to get answered?
I would say, well, one, thank you for having me on this webinar. It means the world to me, and especially having such leader like you. I would say thank you for your initiative on bringing rest tech to the market in a way that is relevant and understandable to all of us. I think we've all been struggling with one cohesive framework that really addresses the different components of the different platforms, and I think it's transformative, and I think the industry needs it. And so, with that, I'm thankful, and yeah, let's keep promoting technologies.
Let's do it. Well, I want to thank you as well. And I've been here with Naira Musallam, who's the co-founder and the co-CEO of Sidex, one of my favorite automated insights platforms, and also one of the leaders in where ResTech and where Insights is going, and is not at all passionate about what she is doing. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for your time and your energy.
Likewise, Patrick. Thank you.
Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. For information on ResTech, our complete list of episodes, and more, visit luc.id/lookingglass.